Picture this. One moment, everything's running smoothly on site. The next, an unforeseen slip, maybe some unsecured equipment, a hazard someone just didn't spot.
And boom, lives are changed forever.
Exactly. It's that sobering reality, isn't it? In construction, even seemingly small safety oversights can just snowball into, well, devastating consequences.
You really can.
Welcome back, everyone, to Construction Safety Pro.
And it's that very real potential for things to go seriously wrong that brings us to our topic today. For those of you out there, managing construction safety day in, day out, you're constantly working to make sites as safe as possible.
Of course.
But maybe take a second. Is your current approach really, truly as effective, as comprehensive as it could be?
That's the big question, isn't it? And that's what we're getting into in this deep dive. We're looking at ISO 4501.201T.
Yeah, and try not to think of it as just another standard collecting dust somewhere.
Right. Think roadmap, a strategic roadmap for building a really solid occupational health and safety OHS management system.
That's a good way to put it.
Our mission today is basically to pull out the core requirements from this standard. We want to really get what they mean and how they can actually translate into safer, healthier construction sites.
Because that's what it boils down to. ISO 45001 provides this systematic framework. It's like an international agreement on best practices for organizations.
And that means construction too, right? Big firms, small subs, everyone.
Oh, absolutely. Includes everyone in construction. The goal is to help them set up, implement, keep going, and always improve their OHS performance.
So the ultimate aim is clear. Prevent injuries, prevent ill health related to work.
Exactly. Foster genuinely safe and healthy workplaces. And what's great is it's designed to be adaptable. Doesn't matter if you're a huge company or a tiny outfit.
Okay, good. So first things first, let's make sure we're all on the same page with some key terms. ISO 4501 uses specific language. Let's start with organization.
Yeah.
That word can mean a lot of different things in construction.
It really can. The standard defines it pretty broadly, actually. It's any person or group with responsibilities, authority, relationships, all geared towards achieving objectives.
Okay.
So think about a construction project. That could be the main contractor, sure. But also a specialized sub, maybe doing the wiring, or even a joint venture setup just for that one build.
So any entity with a role.
Yeah, any entity with a defined role and responsibility for getting the work done.
Got it. Okay, next up, interested party. You sometimes hear stakeholders used too. Who falls under this umbrella on a construction project?
This is really critical for looking at safety in construction. An interested party is basically anyone who can affect your decisions or activities or, be affected by them.
Right, two-way street.
Exactly. So obviously your workers are key. But think about clients, the ones paying for the project, other subcontractors on site, regulatory bodies like OSHA or HSE, depending where you are.
Local communities too, maybe?
Yeah, definitely. Noise, traffic impacts. They're affected. Even your suppliers could be interested parties in some ways. Understanding what they need and expect regarding safety, that's fundamental.
Okay, that's broader than I might have initially thought. Makes sense, though.
Yeah.
And the people doing the actual work, the standard calls them workers. Who does that cover?
Again, it's a deliberately wide definition. It's anyone doing work or work-related activities under the organization's control.
So not just direct employees.
Nope. It includes people working for your subcontractors, temp staff you bring in, agency workers. Essentially, anyone whose work on that site is in some way directed or influenced by your organization.
Okay.
It's about recognizing your safety responsibility for everyone contributing.
Right. Very inclusive. Reflects the reality of most sites. Now, where does all this happen? The standard talks about the workplace.
Simple enough, really. In construction, the workplace is any physical spot under your control where work happens.
So the main site itself.
Primarily, yes. The construction site, all its different areas. But it could also include things like site offices, storage yards, maybe temporary workshops you set up. Anywhere your workers or those you control are doing construction tasks.
Okay. Let's move to the pointy end. Hazard. What's a hazard in the middle of a busy construction site?
Well, the standard defines a hazard as anything with the potential to cause injury and ill health.
Potential. Key word.
Absolutely. And construction sites, let's just say they're full of potential hazards.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Obvious ones, like working at height without proper fall protection, operating heavy machinery without the right training, exposure to hazardous stuff, silica dust, asbestos, chemicals.
Unguarded machinery part?
Yep. Electrical risks, the danger of being hit by falling objects. Anything, really, that has that built-in capacity to harm someone, physically or even mentally.
And where there's a hazard, there's usually risk. How does the standard define risk?
Risk is defined as the effect of uncertainty. Sounds a bit abstract, maybe?
A little, yeah.
But in practice, it's about the possible consequences that could come from those hazards we just talked about. It looks at the chance of something bad happening. A worker tripping, a crane cable failing.
And how bad it could be if it does happen.
Exactly. The potential severity of the injury or damage.
And specifically for workplace safety, we talk about OH&S risk.
Precisely. Occupational health and safety risk, or OH&S risk. That's the specific combination of, 1, how likely is it that a work-related hazard will actually occur, and 2, how severe would the resulting injury or illness be?
So something done often at height without protection is high risk.
Definitely. High likelihood, potentially very severe outcome. That's a high OH&S risk.
Now this is interesting. The standard also talks about an OH&S opportunity.
Yeah.
That sounds more positive.
It is. It's a really proactive part of the standard. An OH&S opportunity is some circumstance, or maybe a set of circumstances, that could lead to better OH&S performance.
How so in construction?
Well, maybe adopting a safer way to put up scaffolding, or investing in new equipment that has better safety guards built in, or even just scheduling work better to reduce fatigue.
So actively looking for ways to improve safety.
Exactly. Not just fixing problems, but seeking enhancements.
Okay. Now, 2 terms that really get into the people side. Participation and consultation. What's the difference?
These are absolutely vital for building a good safety culture where everyone feels involved. Participation means workers are actively involved in making decisions about OH&S.
Like being on a safety committee.
Yeah, or giving feedback on risk assessments, helping develop safe work procedures. Consultation, on the other hand, is about seeking workers' views before management makes a decision that affects their health and safety.
So asking their opinion first.
Right. Both stress that critical two-way communication between management and the workforce on site.
And to keep track of all this, you need documented information. What does that cover in construction safety under ISO 45001?
Documented information is basically any info your organization needs to control and maintain for the OH&S system to work effectively.
Like safety plans.
Yep. Safety management plans, specific risk assessments, safe operating procedures for kit, training records, incident reports.
The paper trail, essentially.
Yeah.
Or the digital trail these days.
Increasingly digital, yeah, which helps with access and control. It's the documented proof of how you're planning, doing, and checking safety on your project.
Okay. And finally, before we dive into the clauses, the PDCA cycle, Plan, Do, Check, Act. Most folks know this, but briefly, why is it relevant here?
It's the engine for continuous improvement in any management system, OH&S included. It's that loop. You plan set objectives, figure out processes based on risks and opportunities.
Then do implement those plans.
Right. Then check, monitor your performance, measure against objectives, check legal compliance, and finally, take action to fix issues and improve performance based on what you found in the check phase.
And then you start planning again based on that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's this ongoing cycle of evaluating and getting better.
All right, great foundation. With those terms clear, let's get into the specific requirements. Starting with Clause 4. Context of the organization. What's this all about for a construction company?
Clause 4 basically tells your organization, okay, step back, look around. You need to understand all the factors, internal and external, that could affect your ability to achieve your safety goals.
Internal like.
Like your own structure, the kind of projects you do. Are they complex? Simple. Your existing safety culture, the resources you have available.
And external.
Things like the regulations you operate under, what your clients expect in terms of safety, how your supply chain and subcontractors work, even the wider economy or social issues. It's about getting that big picture view of your operating world.
So it's much broader than just the site fence line. It's the whole ecosystem you work in.
Precisely. And Clause 4.2 really hones in on understanding the needs and expectations of your workers and those other interested parties we mentioned.
Clients, regulators, the community.
Yes. What are their specific safety concerns? What do they expect from you on your projects? You have to actively figure this out.
And then decide which of those become actual requirements for your safety system.
Exactly. A client might have specific safety rules, for instance, that you as the contractor just have to meet. Those become requirements for your system.
Makes total sense. You can't build a safety system in a vacuum. Then Clause 4.3 talks about determining the scope of the system. How do you draw those lines, especially if you do lots of different types of construction work?
Defining the scope is about being crystal clear on what your OH&S management system actually covers.
Okay.
You look at those internal-external issues, the interested party needs, and crucially for construction, the specific work activities, products, services you do, or that you have control or influence over.
So everything you do that impacts safety on site.
Pretty much, yeah. Your system needs to cover all those aspects, and you absolutely have to document that scope. You can't just decide to exclude, say, demolition work because it's high risk. The scope needs to truly reflect what you actually do.
Right, it needs to be honest and cover everything relevant. And then clause 4.4 is the big commitment, isn't it? You have to establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve the system according to the standard.
That's the core requirement. It's not a one-and-done thing. It's an ongoing process of building, checking, and making your safety practices stronger.
Okay, let's move to clause 5. Leadership and worker participation. Given how hazardous construction can be, this feels like it must be absolutely central.
Foundational. Couldn't agree more. Clause 5 puts the responsibility squarely on top management to really show leadership and commitment to the OH&S system.
Not just sign a piece of paper.
No way. It means actively making sure the OH&S policy and objectives exist and actually line up with the company's overall strategy. It means building safety thinking into your core business processes.
Providing resources.
Absolutely. Providing the needed resources, time, money, people, and maybe the biggest thing, fostering a positive safety culture across all your sites, where safety is a core value, not just something you have to do.
So leaders setting the tone, walking the talk, not just passing the buck down.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Then Clause 5.2 gets into the specifics of the OH&S policy itself. What are the key commitments that policy needs to make, especially for construction?
Well, standard says it has to include a clear commitment to provide safe and healthy working conditions, to prevent work-related injury and ill health.
Right.
It needs to fit the company, its size, context, the specific risks and opportunities in its construction work, and it has to provide a framework for setting safety objectives.
And critically, it must state commitments to fulfilling legal requirements.
All the relevant safety laws and regs.
To actively eliminate hazards and reduce OH&S risks, hinting strongly at that hierarchy of controls.
Which we'll get to.
A commitment to continually improve the system, and super important, a commitment to consultation and participation of workers.
And their representatives, if they have them?
Yes. And this policy can't just sit in a folder. It needs to be documented, communicated effectively to everyone, and be available to outsiders who need to see it. It should be a living document reflecting real values.
Okay. Clause 5.3 then hits on roles, responsibilities, and authorities. On a complex site with multiple managers, subs, everyone involved, how does that work?
This just hammers home how vital it is to have clear accountability for safety at every single level. Top management has to ensure that roles, responsibilities, authorities for safety are defined clearly.
And communicated.
Yes, communicated effectively and kept up to date as documented information. While you can delegate tasks downwards, the standard is very clear. Top management keeps the ultimate accountability for how well the whole OH&S system performs.
So everyone needs to know their part.
Every single worker, no matter their job or who employs them on that site, needs to understand their specific responsibilities for contributing to safety.
And that leads us nicely into Clause 5.4, consultation and participation of workers. You mentioned this earlier, but in the dynamic world of construction, this seems like a real cornerstone.
It's absolutely fundamental. This clause lays out requirements for solid processes to make sure workers, especially non-managerial workers, the ones often facing the hazards directly, are not just consulted, but actively participating in the OH&S system.
From planning right through to improvement.
Exactly. All stages. Development, planning, implementation, checking performance, improving it. Their firsthand experience, it's invaluable.
So what does the standard require practically to make sure this consultation and participation actually happens and works?
Well, the organization has to provide the necessary resources. That includes giving workers enough time to actually participate.
Right. Can't expect them to do it entirely on their own time.
No. And they need access to clear, understandable information about the safety system and related issues in a timely way. Plus, organizations have to actively look for and remove any barriers stopping workers from participating.
Like what kind of barriers?
Could be fear of getting in trouble for raising a concern, language difficulties, maybe just processes that are too complicated and put people off. You need trust and open communication.
The standard specifically calls out some key areas where consulting non-managerial workers is really important, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It emphasizes getting their input on things like Figuring out interested parties' needs, setting the OH&S policy, assigning safety roles, how the company meets its legal duties, setting safety objectives and planning to meet them.
Procurement processes, too.
Yes, procurement, deciding what safety aspects to monitor and measure, planning audits, and driving continuous improvement overall. Their direct experience just makes their input crucial in all these areas.
And participation is more active than just being asked your opinion.
Exactly. Participation means they're actively involved in things like deciding how consultation and participation will actually work, identifying hazards and assessing risks, figuring out the best ways to control those risks.
Identifying training needs.
Yes, competence and training needs, deciding on communication methods, even being involved in investigating incidents and figuring out how to stop them happening again. It's about empowering the workforce to really take ownership of safety.
Okay, great. Let's shift gears to Clause 6, which is all about planning. This seems like where all the context, leadership, and participation groundwork gets turned into actual plans.
That's a good way to think about it. Clause 6 is all about proactive planning for OH&S management. It starts by looking back at your context from Clause 4 and the needs of your interested parties.
To do what?
To identify the specific risks and opportunities your OH&S system needs to tackle. This includes risks that could stop you achieving your safety goals, risks that could cause problems.
But also opportunities.
Yes, and also opportunities you can grab to drive continuous improvement in safety performance. It's looking at both sides' potential challenges and potential improvements.
So very much looking ahead, anticipating, and not just reacting after something goes wrong.
Precisely. Then Clause 6.1.2 digs into the really critical processes. Hazard identification and assessment of risks and opportunities. This is the core of prevention, right?
Right. And hazard ID has to be ongoing on a construction site. Conditions change constantly. What kind of factors does the standard say companies need to consider?
It stresses a systematic, ongoing approach. You need to think broadly, especially in construction. Things like how work is organized, lone working, shift work, social factors, workload stress, maybe harassment.
Routine and non-routine stuff.
Yes. Infrastructure, equipment, materials used, workplace design. Human factors, people's capabilities, past incidents or near misses, learn from them.
Potential emergencies.
Definitely. And everyone at the workplace, employees, contractors, visitors, public, also any changes happening in the organization, like new processes or kit, and just keeping up with new knowledge about hazards.
Wow, that's a comprehensive list. Shows the complexity. And once hazards are ID'd, the next step is assessing the risk.
Exactly. Clause 6.1.2.2 says you need processes to systematically assess the OH&S risks from those hazards. And you have to consider how effective your current controls are.
You also need to assess other risks to the system itself.
Yes, risks related to setting up, running, and maintaining the OH&S system. And importantly, the standard says you need documented info on your risk assessment method, how you do it, and the criteria you use to judge the risk level. That keeps it consistent.
And on the flip side, evaluating opportunities. How does the standard handle the evaluation of OH&S opportunities?
Clause 6.1.2.3 requires processes for actively evaluating those opportunities. It's about proactively seeking ways to boost your safety performance.
Like looking at plan changes.
Yeah, plan changes in the company, policies, processes, how could they improve safety? Also looking for chances to adapt work to the workers, make it fit them better, and fundamentally opportunities to eliminate hazards or reduce risks at the source. You evaluate opportunities just like you evaluate risks.
Okay. Then 6.1.3 is about determination of legal and other requirements. Huge topic in construction with all the regulations.
Absolutely critical. You must have processes to find out and get access to all the current legal requirements that apply to your hazards, risks, and the whole OH&S system in construction.
It's not just knowing the laws exist.
No, it's understanding exactly how they apply to you, your activities, and figuring out what needs to be communicated about these rules to your workers and others. And these legal requirements have to be actively considered when you're building, running, and improving your system.
And keep records.
Yes, maintain documented information on these requirements so you always have a current, accessible record.
So it's about weaving compliance deep into your safety practices, not just treating it as a separate checklist. And all this context, hazards, risks, legal stuff, leads to Clause 6.1.4, planning actions.
Yep, this is where the rubber meets the road. You translate all that prep work into actual action plans. What specific actions will you take to deal with the risks and opportunities? How will you meet legal requirements? How will you prepare for emergencies?
And the planning needs detail.
Yes, detail on how actions integrate into your OH&S system and other business processes. And, crucially, how you'll check if the actions actually worked. The standard also specifically points to using the hierarchy of controls when planning actions.
Eliminate, substitute, engineer, administrate, PPE, that hierarchy.
That's the one. Prioritize the most effective controls first.
Okay, nearly there with planning. Clause 6.2 is OH&S objectives and planning to achieve them. Setting clear safety goals seems vital for driving improvement.
Undeniably. You need to set OH&S objectives at relevant levels and functions in the company. The goal is always maintaining and improving the system and overall safety performance.
And these objectives need to link back.
Yes, fully consistent with the OH&S policy. Measurable, if possible, or at least performance evaluable. They need to factor in legal requirements, the risk opportunity assessment results, and again, input from worker consultation.
And you monitor them.
Monitor them, communicate them, update them as needed.
And the planning part of 6.2 is just figuring out how to hit those objectives.
Precisely. When planning how to achieve them, you need to figure out what actions, what resources, people, money, who's responsible, when will it be done by, how will we measure success, what indicators, and how do these actions fit into our wider business processes.
And document this too.
Yes, maintain documented information on the objectives and the detailed plans to achieve them. Keeps everyone clear, accountable, and lets you track progress.
So Clause 6 really is like the engine room, isn't it? Taking all the understanding and commitment and turning it into practical, planned action to keep people safe in construction.
That's a great way to put it. It's where strategy meets the day-to-day reality on site.
This has been, well, incredibly thorough. A really insightful look at these foundational parts of ISO 45001. We've covered a lot, understanding context, the absolute need for leadership and worker involvement, and that detailed planning for hazards, risks, and setting goals.
Yeah, it's clear how systematic it is.
It really shows that this kind of proactive, structured approach isn't just nice to have, it's fundamental for making construction safer for everyone involved.
And you can see how interconnected it all is, can't you? You can't plan well without understanding your context and stakeholders. And leadership and worker involvement are needed for any of it to actually work.
It definitely raises a big question for everyone listening who's involved in construction safety. What are the real long-term upsides of genuinely investing in a robust system like ISO 4501 describes? How does that proactive investment stack up against the potential costs, human and financial, if safety gets neglected?
It's a crucial comparison to make.
And maybe even beyond preventing accidents, how can truly committing to these principles boost productivity, engage your workforce more, and build a stronger reputation? These are things every leader, every safety pro needs to think about, I reckon.
Absolutely. And look, for anyone serious about lifting their safety game, we'd really encourage you, go look at the ISO 4501 standard itself.
Get into the detail.
Yeah, read it, understand the nuances, think critically about how these principles apply in your specific construction world. Take an honest look at what you do now and spot where this kind of systematic approach could make a real lasting difference to the safety and well-being of everyone on your sites.
Some real food for thought there. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into ISO 4501.201. We really hope it's giving you a clearer picture of the core requirements and, maybe more importantly, the potential it holds for creating safer, healthier workplaces across the entire construction industry.